Well, hello, David Mack, artist and writer and producer extraordinaire. It is wonderful to see you. How are you doing today?
Hey, Olivia Bendis. I'm doing well. It's good to connect with you. Yeah,
It's
this is
great to
good.
see you. Yeah, it's so wonderful to see you. It's been a long time.
Mhm.
Today I have some questions prepared about your career as an artist. And we're gonna kind of go through your career and all the different things you've been up to. And so first I wanted to start with talking about how you have like an extremely unique style with your art. So I wanted to ask you a bit about what inspired you to become an artist and if there were any like artists and creators that inspired your work and your unique visual style.
Yeah. I mean, when I was a kid, I did a lot of different things, and one of them was I did like to make stuff, but I did a lot of other very active things, and I think I got more positive reinforcement for drawing and making stuff because if when I was sitting down quietly doing something, I got less negative reinforcement than if I was starting fires or exploding something or making a lot of noise. The first time I ever tried making a comic book, I felt like it was a really good medium for me because this medium of comics was kind of for me like a medium that united all the other mediums that I like to do.
I know that you kind of broke into the comic book world when you were pretty young. And I was just wondering, like, what was your first like paid comic book gig?
Yeah, I started college when I was 17, and I was still acting like I was professional, a comic artist. I was making my own comics constantly. When I was 18, I got my first paying work.
And how long after that did you start working with like Marvel and DC?
The big independent publisher that I kind of broke into was Caliber Comics. They did like a 3 issue series of something that turned out to be like their bestseller of the year. And I did a convention with them in New York, January 1993. And on the ride back, I was so inspired that I started putting together this creator-owned series, which became a series called Kabuki. That Kabuki series that I was doing that got me to offer to start writing Daredevil at Marvel Comics.
I kind of want to talk more about like your time at Marvel because you created the character Echo with Joe Quesada, which who has recently made her like MCU debut in the Hawkeye series. And so I kind of wanted to ask you about what the process is like creating a character for something as big as like the Marvel Comics universe and like adding another piece to this giant world.
Yeah, that was interesting. So yeah, I think I got the offer to do it in 1997. And then I think I started writing Daredevil in 98. And I think it started being published in 99. I had met Joe Quesada briefly at a convention, maybe 1995. And I gave him like my Kabuki books. And he called me and said, "Hey, I really like your writing and the story. Let's work together sometime." And he's an artist, and he was talking about him doing the art and me writing something with him. A couple years later, I had Kabuki at a larger publisher at this time called Image Comics, and he gave me a call and said he was going to be taking over 4 books at Marvel and asked if I would write Daredevil with Joe Quesada doing the artwork on it. That was my very first Marvel work. I started as a writer for Daredevil, and I asked Joe, you're drawing this, I'm going to write to what I think are your strengths to draw, what I think I would want you to draw, but is there anything in particular you want to draw? And he said, write any story that you want. I only ask one thing, and that's that you create a brand new character in this story. Echo came out in 1999, and we didn't know at that time that 20 years later there would be so many Marvel movies or TV shows or anything. But it's pretty cool that Echo will have her own series coming out next year, and I was happy with the portrayal of her in the Hawkeye series. I'm happy that there was the character is deaf and indigenous, and the actress is also deaf and indigenous, and I thought she did a great job. And there were like scenes and even lines in that Hawkeye series that I wrote over 20 years ago that are in there that they handled really well. So I'm really looking forward to the Echo series. And it's pretty cool that, a character, from years ago created in that story is like giving all these people jobs. And, there's actors that are, portraying her and her father and other characters of the story. And that's going to have a big ripple effect for the people that see that.
To talk more about like your relationship with like film, TV, and like video production, I kind of wanted to ask you about like the music videos that you have worked on.
Yeah, I really enjoy like creating music videos and directing them, and working on like the main titles for TV shows and film. Um, One of the characters your father created, Jessica Jones, and I did all the covers for that series. So when there was going to be a TV show on Netflix with Jessica Jones, I got an email from Joe Quesada and it said urgent. I looked at it and it said call him, and so I called him and he said, hey, they're trying to make the opening titles for the Jessica Jones TV show, and they keep hiring people and telling them to make it look like David Mack did it, but they're not happy with it. And so Joe said that he told them, why don't you just hire David Mack? And they said we didn't know we could do that. And so Joe put me in touch with them. And then I got to work on the opening titles of Jessica Jones Netflix, and got nominated for an Emmy. So went to the Emmys for that. So I had no idea that this really unusual, quirky book that we worked on 20 years ago I would get nominated for an Emmy for opening titles from a TV show of it, years later. And I had, before that, I had already worked on the main titles for a Marvel film called Captain America: The Winter Soldier. On that one, the titles come at the end of the film, and it's like a really stark black and white, bold shapes that come at the end of the film.
That was gonna be my next question, was about those opening titles and stuff and the experience behind like getting those. And it's interesting that you say that for the Jessica Jones title that they were like, oh, that's something he can do.
I can't remember if I had already done some music videos at that same time. It was around that time. I might have done music videos right before that, but I was working on them around that time. And the music videos came in an interesting way. Amanda Palmer, I had done some album art for her before, and Amanda Palmer said like, hey, I want you to do this music video, and here's the song. And I basically just had 2 weeks to do it, and I didn't know how to do it. I started doing this thing where someone asked me to do a project and I would just say yes, even though I didn't know how to do it. And I had to turn it in 2 weeks. So I just thought, well, I'll do my best to figure this out. And at the end of 2 weeks, you'll have whatever you have, because that's the deadline. And it kind of felt like being in school, where you have a project and you haven't done this project before. You don't know how to do this project, but once you've done the project, now you know how to do the project. I affixed a tripod over my desk with a camera facing down, and I had a lot of 3-dimensional things on my desk, and I would just move them around and then take a photo and move it and take a photo. That was fun. I didn't really, I had a certain amount of ideas and stuff assembled on my desk, but there's always room for the magic to happen. And you kind of dance with it, and there's some spontaneity involved too. The dashboard confessional thing is interesting. I was on a flight from Japan, and sitting next to me was this guy that started talking to me, and I saw he had a guitar case when he was getting on the plane, and we were talking about different stuff. And then he told me that he was the lead singer for Dashboard Confessional. His name's Chris Caraba, and he was showing me photos on his phone about stuff he's working on, and I was showing him the photos on my phone of that Amanda Palmer stop motion. And we ended up talking like the whole flight. And at the end of the flight, when we were getting off, he was like, hey man, you should do our one of our music videos. And he was like, yeah, you should direct it. And I was like, okay, cool. And I figured sometime, 2 years later or something, maybe we'd talk about it. And then like the next week, I got an email from his record company, and it said, okay, so I understand you're directing the next music video and it's due in 30 days, So I already had stuff planned to do, and I didn't think I had time to do it, but I just said yes, made a music video in 30 days for him.
Yeah, I mean, it turned out great. So for now, that's all the questions that I have for you today. thank you so much for agreeing to do this with me. It was great talking to you. And yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, it was great. Thanks so much, Olivia.
Of
Really good to
course.
connect with you.
Great. Thank you so much.
Okay, have a great night.
Yes, you too.